There's a letter that costs less than $10 to send and that triggers an automatic legal penalty in almost every state in America. The penalty is not a fine you negotiate. It is not a judgment you have to win in court after months of litigation. It is a statutory multiplier enacted by state legislatures that converts your security deposit into a sum that is 2, sometimes 3 times the original amount, automatically, by operation of law, the moment the landlord misses a deadline or fails to follow a specific written procedure. Most tenants never send the letter. Most tenants accept the partial return, the damage deductions they did not authorize, the cleaning fees they never agreed to, without understanding that a single page of text citing their state's residential landlord-tenant statute would transform their landlord's silence or noncompliance into an automatic financial penalty that no judge has discretion to reduce. The security deposit is one of the most commonly abused financial relationships in American housing. According to data compiled by apartment research firms and legal aid organizations, approximately 40% of renters do not receive their full deposit back. The total amount withheld from tenants annually across the United States is estimated at well over $1 billion. Most of it is withheld, not because the landlord has legitimate claims for damage, but because the landlord understands that most tenants will not pursue the money. Filing in small claims court seems complicated. Hiring an attorney for a $500 deposit dispute makes no economic sense, and so the landlord keeps the money. The formula has worked for decades, and state legislatures, responding to documented patterns of abuse, have systematically enacted penalty statutes specifically designed to change that calculation. Welcome to the Invisible Ledger. If these stories matter to you, hit subscribe and the bell. This is where we trace the money they told you not to follow. Security deposit law in the United States is entirely state law. There is no federal statute governing how landlords must handle residential security deposits, though the Federal Trade Commission does have general authority over unfair and deceptive practices in housing. The patchwork of state statutes varies significantly in their specific requirements, but they share common structural elements that reflect decades of legislative refinement in response to documented tenant abuse. Every state with a residential security deposit statute, which covers all 50 states to varying degrees, imposes some form of deadline by which the landlord must return the deposit after the tenancy ends. In California, the deadline is 21 calendar days under Civil Code, Section 1950. 5. In New York, it is 14 days for non-payment of rent cases and varies for other terminations under the Real Property Law, Section 226C. In Texas, the deadline is 30 days under Property Code, Section 92. 109. In Florida, it is 15 days for full return or 30 days for a notice of intention to make deductions under Florida statutes, Section 83. 49. In Illinois, it is 30 days for written notification of deductions and 45 days for the actual return under the Security Deposit Return Act. In Massachusetts, it is 30 days under general laws, Chapter 186, Section 15B. Along with the deadline, virtually every state statute requires that any deductions from the deposit be accompanied by a written itemized statement describing each deduction with specificity, including the nature of the damage claimed, the cost of repair or cleaning, and in many states, receipts or invoices supporting the amounts claimed. A landlord who simply keeps the deposit without sending the itemized statement, or who sends the statement late, or who sends it without adequate supporting documentation, has violated the statute regardless of whether the underlying claims for damage might have been legitimate. The penalty provisions are the mechanism that state legislators designed to make the statutes actually work. In California, a landlord who wrongfully withholds a deposit in bad faith is liable for up to 2 times the deposit amount as a statutory penalty, plus actual damages under Civil Code, Section 1950. 5L. In New York, a landlord who fails to comply is liable for a penalty equal to the security deposit amount in addition to returning it, effectively a 2 times multiplier. In Texas, a landlord who retains the deposit in bad faith is liable for 3 times the amount wrongfully withheld, plus reasonable attorney's fees. In Florida, a landlord who fails to timely return the deposit or send the required notice forfeits all right to make any claim against the deposit. In Massachusetts, a landlord who fails to return the deposit within 30 days is liable for 3 times the deposit amount plus attorney's fees and costs. Before I go further, this video is just the surface. Inside the Invisible Ledger Vault, you will find the complete state-by-state security deposit statute reference guide with deadlines, penalty multipliers, and required documentation for all 50 states. The formal demand letter template with state-specific statutory citations, the small claims court filing guide for deposit disputes, and the move-out documentation checklist to protect your deposit before you leave. The link is in the description. But stay right here. The demand letter works because it changes the landlord's calculation. Without the letter, the landlord's options are keep the deposit and hope the tenant does nothing, or return it. With the letter, The landlord's options are return the deposit within days or risk a statutory penalty of 2 to 3 times the amount. Most landlords, when confronted with a specific, correct statutory citation and a clear deadline, choose the former, not because they are honest, because they are rational. The expected value of noncompliance, weighted by the probability that the tenant will actually file, shifts dramatically when the tenant demonstrates knowledge of the statute and willingness to enforce it. The letter must contain specific elements to be effective. It should be sent by certified mail with return receipt requested. It should identify the property address, the lease dates, and the amount of the deposit paid. It should reference the specific state statute governing security deposits and note the statutory deadline by which the deposit must have been returned. It should state that, as of the date of the letter, no deposit or itemized deduction statement has been received, or alternatively, that a deduction was received but not accompanied by the documentation required by the statute. It should demand the return of the full deposit within a specific number of days, typically 5 to 7 business days, and it should state clearly that failure to comply will result in the filing of a legal action, seeking the statutory penalty plus attorney's fees and costs as permitted by the applicable state law. If you have made it this far, you already understand the security deposit penalty framework better than the vast majority of the 47 million renter households in America who hand over their deposits without knowing the legal infrastructure that protects them. Subscribe and share this video. The small claims court option is the backstop when the letter does not produce results. Every state in America has a small claims court system specifically designed for disputes of this type. Filing fees typically range from $30 to $100. The filing process is designed to be completed without an attorney. The hearing is typically scheduled within 60 to 90 days of filing. And in a security deposit dispute where the landlord failed to comply with clear statutory requirements, the plaintiff's case is often straightforwardly documentable with the lease agreement, the deposit receipt, the move-out checklist or photos, and the certified mail record showing the demand letter was received. Now let me give you the exact steps. Step 1. Document the condition of the property when you move out. Walk through every room and take dated photographs and video of every surface, every wall, every appliance, every fixture. Do this on the day you return the keys and email the photos to yourself or your landlord immediately, creating a timestamp. Step 2. Send a forwarding address to the landlord in writing at the time you return the keys. Most state statutes require the landlord to have your forwarding address to send the deposit. Some statutes allow landlords to argue that the deposit was not returned because they did not have your forwarding address. Step 3. Track the statutory deadline for your state from the date you return possession of the unit, which is usually the last day of the lease or the date you return the keys, whichever is later. Set a calendar reminder. Step 4. If the deadline passes without the deposit or a compliant itemized statement, draft and send the formal demand letter by certified mail with return receipt. The letter should cite the specific statute, state the penalty amount, and give a short cure period. Step 5. If the landlord responds with a deduction list that lacks required documentation or deducts for normal wear and tear rather than actual damage, respond in writing disputing those specific deductions and requesting the required receipts or invoices. Step 6. If the demand letter does not resolve the matter, file in small claims court. Bring all documentation including the lease, deposit receipt, move-out photos, the certified mail receipt, the demand letter, and any written responses from the landlord. I need to be honest with you. The security deposit statutes have real limitations. First, the statutory penalty is typically triggered by bad faith withholding in states that require bad faith as an element. In states like California, if the landlord can demonstrate a reasonable basis for the deduction, even if it turns out to be incorrect, the court may not award the penalty. Second, the demand letter is most effective against landlords who are rational actors managing multiple properties. Individual homeowners renting a single property for the first time may simply ignore letters out of ignorance or stubbornness, and the threat of small claims court must be carried through. Third, winning a small claims court judgment and collecting it are different things. A landlord who does not have liquid assets may not be able to pay even a valid judgment immediately, though judgments accrue interest and can be enforced through wage, garnishment, and bank levy in most states. Fourth, normal wear and tear, meaning deterioration that results from ordinary use over time, is never a legitimate basis for a deduction under any state's statute. But landlords frequently attempt to deduct for it, and the line between wear and tear and actual damage can be genuinely disputed. Your documentation of the unit's condition at move-out is your primary defense against this. Fifth, the penalties vary widely by state. Some states impose only a single multiplier, while others impose triple damages plus attorney's fees. Know your state's specific statute before sending the letter. Your grandparents, who rented rooms, rented floors of houses, rented apartments in growing industrial cities, were at the complete mercy of their landlords. A handshake and a rental book were the only protection. If the landlord kept the money, the tenant had no practical recourse. Then, one generation of state legislators, responding to decades of documented abuse, built a penalty framework that made the calculation of keeping the deposit legally and financially dangerous. Not for every landlord, but for every landlord who knows their tenant knows the law. The letter is not a threat. It is an education. It tells the landlord that you have read the statute they hoped you had not read, and that the money they were planning to keep has just become considerably more expensive to hold on to. Subscribe and share this video. Every share puts the state security deposit statute in front of a renter who is about to lose a deposit they never had to lose. The next vault opens soon, and what is inside will reveal a protection written into American law in the 1930s that makes a portion of every homeowner's property untouchable by creditors, immune to bankruptcy proceedings, and available to anyone who